The pack killed all her family, not knowing they left one alive who will destroy them all. The forest was quiet under the cold light of the red moon. Shadows stretched across the ground like dark fingers, curling around every tree and rock. Lyra crouched behind a fallen log, her small hands trembling as she clutched a wooden charm her mother had given her. The air was thick with smoke and the smell of burning timber. Her village, once alive with laughter and music, now lay in ruin. Flames licked the sky, turning the night into a burning sea of orange. The sound of growls and harsh voices filled the air. Lyra's heart pounded so loudly she was sure they could hear it. She had seen the pack coming from afar, a storm of fur, teeth, and cruelty. And she had seen them tear her family apart. Her parents, her little brother, her sisters, all gone, but somehow she was still alive. Lyra's eyes filled with tears, not for herself but for the ones who could no longer cry. She crawled to the edge of the forest, careful not to make a sound. The Alpha King's pack was thorough, ruthless, and merciless. They thought they had destroyed every trace of her family. They were wrong. A rustling behind her made her freeze. A shadow emerged, not one of the wolves, but an old woman draped in tattered robes. Her eyes were sharp, glimmering with knowledge of secrets long forgotten. "You survived," the woman said softly, as if speaking to a ghost. "That means the curse still has hope." Lyra blinked. "Curse?" She did not understand. "You are the last of your bloodline," the woman continued, stepping closer. "And that blood carries power the world has feared for centuries, power strong enough to turn even the fiercest wolf against itself." Lyra shook her head. I don't understand." Her voice was small, broken, but determination burned inside her. I want them gone. My family is gone. I can't just hide anymore." The old woman studied her, then nodded. "Vengeance is a heavy fire, child. It can burn your heart if you do not control it, but it can also give you strength. Come with me. If you survive the night, you must learn to master the magic in your blood." Lyra hesitated. The thought of leaving the forest she had known all her life, the ruins of her home, was terrifying. But the thought of staying meant death. She nodded. The woman took her hand, and together they vanished into the deeper shadows of the forest. Days turned into weeks, and the weeks into months. Lyra's grief hardened into a cold, burning determination. Under the old woman's guidance, she learned to move silently, to read the forest, to listen to the whispers of the wind. Most importantly, she began to understand the magic within her. It was subtle at first, a flicker of light when she thought of her family, a sudden gust of wind when her anger flared, and then slowly it became stronger. Branches bent to her will. Shadows shifted where she walked. Wolves' cries seemed to echo in response to her emotions. Yet every night she dreamed of them, the Alpha King and his pack. She saw their faces, their cruel laughter. She felt the ache of loss as sharply as if it had happened yesterday. And every night she swore she would make them pay for what they had done. But vengeance, she learned, was not simple. It required patience, strategy, and control was something she did not yet fully possess. One evening, as the red moon rose again, the old woman led Lyra to a cliff overlooking the ruins of her village. The fire had long gone, but smoke still lingered in the cold wind. "Do you feel it?" the old woman asked. "The pull of your blood, the call of destiny?" Lyra nodded. "Yes, it wants something. I can feel it in my chest like it's alive." "That is the curse," the woman said. "It is not just revenge you will wield. It is a power tied to your very soul. One mistake and it will consume you." Lyra clenched her fists, determination blazing in her eyes. "Then I will master it. I will not let it destroy me. I will destroy them first." The old woman placed a hand on her shoulder. "Remember, child, power without wisdom is a blade that cuts the hand that wields it. Learn restraint and you will survive. Learn recklessness and you will fall." Night after night, Lyra trained. She ran through the forest, hunting her own shadows, learning to bend the elements. Her anger was a forge, shaping her body and her mind. Slowly her small frame became strong, her movements precise and fluid. Her magic, once flickering and weak, became a force that seemed almost alive, responding to her will. But mastery did not mean peace. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw her family's faces. Every time she rested, she heard the wolves' laughter, and every night she whispered a vow into the wind. I will return, I will make them pay, and they will know the name of the one they left alive. Then, one night, everything changed. Lyra was practicing near a river when the water began to ripple unnaturally. Shadows twisted across its surface, dark shapes moving with intent. The red moon shone brighter than ever, bathing the forest in an eerie light. From the trees, a low growl rolled, deep and resonant. Lyra's instincts screamed. She turned to see a figure emerging from the darkness. Tall, broad, his eyes glowing faintly in the moonlight. A man, not human, not wolf. Both. Kale, the Alpha King's second-in-command, stood there, silent but watching. Lyra froze. Her magic reacted instantly, flames of power surging through her veins. Shadows bent toward her, curling protectively. Kale's voice was calm, even soft, though it carried the weight of command. Who are you, child? Why does the forest speak of you? Lyra's chest tightened. Her heart beat fast, not only from fear but something else, something she did not understand. Anger, curiosity, something dangerous like a spark that could ignite fire. I am, she began, then stopped. What could she say? That she was the last of a family destroyed by his pack? That she had learned magic to make them all pay? No, not yet. Not while she had nothing but a whisper of power. I am just a traveler, she said finally, her voice steady despite the storm inside her. Kale tilted his head, studying her with sharp, unyielding eyes. A traveler does not summon fire in the forest, nor does it command shadows to bend to its will. Lyra took a step back, instinctively. I do not know what you mean, she said. Kale's gaze narrowed. You do, I have felt it. A pulse in the trees, a presence that should not be here. You are dangerous. For the first time, Lyra felt the weight of the prophecy she had only just begun to understand. The power in her blood was no longer hers alone. It had been noticed. And if Kale, a creature of the pack that had destroyed her family, knew of it, then the Alpha King would know soon as well. Lyra's stomach twisted with fear and anticipation. Every lesson from the old woman, every hour of training, had led to this moment. Her survival was no longer enough. She would have to confront them, all of them, and the thought both thrilled and terrified her. Kale took a step closer, his voice dropping to a whisper that seemed to echo in the night. The Alpha King will want to see you. He will want answers. Lyra's chest tightened. The forest seemed to hold its breath. She understood the truth even before the words left his mouth. The hunt was not over. The past she had survived was reaching for her. And the night she had been training for, dreaming of, had arrived. Her eyes met his, fierce and unyielding. I will not be taken, she said, though her voice trembled slightly. I will not be yours. Kale's lips curved in a faint, unreadable smile. We shall see. The shadows of the forest seemed to close in around them, as if the trees themselves were whispering of the coming storm. Lyra could feel her magic thrumming like a heartbeat, louder and louder, ready to be unleashed. The red moon shone higher, casting the world in blood and silver. And for the first time, Lyra understood. Survival was no longer enough. She would have to rise, she would have to fight. And she would have to face the monsters of the past, including the one standing before her now. The forest held its silence, waiting, and so did she. Cliffhanger. Lyra's magic surged uncontrollably for the first time, illuminating the forest in a brilliant, otherworldly light. From the shadows, Kale's eyes widened, recognition, curiosity, and perhaps something more dangerous glinting in them. The Alpha King had sensed the disturbance. The hunt was about to begin. The night air was thick with mist as Lyra approached the outskirts of the Alpha King's territory. From her hidden vantage point atop a rocky hill, she could see the vast expanse of the castle below. Dark stone towers rose like jagged teeth against the sky, their windows glowing faintly with firelight. Guards patrolled the walls, their eyes sharp and ears alert. The weight of the forest behind her felt distant. Ahead lay a world of danger she had only imagined in her dreams of vengeance. Lyra adjusted the hood over her head, her cloak hiding the faint glow of her magic. Each step closer to the castle made her pulse quicken. She had survived the forest. She had mastered fragments of her power. Yet now, facing the heart of her enemy's strength, a tremor of fear coiled in her stomach. Not fear of death, but fear of losing herself to the anger that burned inside. She remembered the old woman's words, "Power without wisdom is a blade that cuts the hand that wields it." Lyra took a deep breath and stepped forward. The castle gates were massive, carved from black stone and iron. A guard approached, a tall wolf shifter with golden eyes. His stance was rigid, every movement precise. Lyra forced herself to move like an ordinary traveler seeking shelter, hiding the awareness that her aura already spoke volumes. I, I seek refuge for the night," she said softly, her voice trembling just enough to seem convincing. The guard's eyes narrowed. The castle does not take travelers lightly. Before Lyra could respond, a figure appeared behind him, Kale. His presence was magnetic, calm yet commanding. His gaze swept over her with an intensity that made her chest tighten. "She is different," he said quietly. "Let her stay, but do not leave her alone." Lyra's heart skipped. His voice, though low, carried authority that silenced the guard immediately. She could feel it, the subtle pull of his attention, like a tether she could neither escape nor resist. As they entered the castle, Lyra's eyes roamed over the interior. The halls were vast, lit by flickering torches, with tapestries depicting battles and victories of the Alpha King's ancestors. Statues of wolves in mid-leap, their stone eyes gleaming with lifelike ferocity, lined the corridors. The air smelled faintly of smoke and iron, and every step echoed like a drumbeat, reminding her that she was deep in enemy territory. Kale guided her to a chamber near the inner courtyard. "You will stay here tonight," he said, his tone soft but firm. "Do not wander." "The Alpha King is observant." Lyra nodded, her fingers brushing the doorframe as she entered. The room was simple yet elegant, with a bed draped in dark linens and a small fireplace flickering in the corner. Her mind raced. She was in the enemy's heart, yet for the first time she felt a strange sense of control. But control was fragile. As night deepened, Lyra explored the castle in secret. Her magic allowed her to slip through shadows, her presence unnoticed by patrolling guards. She observed the hierarchy of the pack, noting tension among the Alpha King's lieutenants. Whispers of mistrust, subtle signs of fear and rivalries she could exploit. Every detail she memorized, every secret stored away. It was during these silent movements that she found herself near the training yard. Kale was there, sparring with another wolf shifter. His movements were precise, fluid, like a predator dancing through the shadows. Lyra's breath caught. She had trained to fight, to wield power, yet watching him was different. He was strength and grace, a force she had been told to hate, yet something inside her stirred. Kale stopped suddenly, his golden eyes scanning the shadows. Lyra froze, heart hammering. "You're here," he said quietly, almost a statement rather than a question. She started, then stopped. She could feel her magic buzzing, whispering to her. It wanted to reveal itself, to strike, to make him see the truth of her power. But she held back, remembering the old woman's warning. Kale's gaze softened just enough that she felt a spark of something dangerous and thrilling: trust, curiosity. Lyra could not name it. "You are not like the others," he said finally. "There is fire in you. A storm waiting to break." Lyra's chest tightened. She wanted to respond, to warn him, to hide, to flee all at once. Instead, she nodded. I have learned to survive," she said, her voice small but steady, "and to protect myself." Kale studied her, as if weighing her against some invisible scale. Then he nodded and turned. leaving her alone in the shadows. Yet even as he walked away, she felt the invisible thread of attention connecting them, like a tether she could neither sever nor ignore. Days passed, each one a test. Lyra continued her observation, her training, and her subtle acts of influence. A whispered word here, a shadow shifted there. She began planting seeds of doubt within the pack, small acts that caused hesitation, suspicion, and fear. Wolves who once followed without question now glanced at each other nervously. But the closer she came to her plan, the more dangerous her situation became. The Alpha King himself grew suspicious. Dark rumors of a ghostly presence, a force in the forest that could rival his pack, reached his ears. His attention was keen, his mind calculating, and Lyra felt the weight of his gaze even when he was not present. One night she was summoned to the inner hall. Torches flickered along the high walls and the air felt charged, heavy with anticipation. The Alpha King sat upon his throne, a figure of shadow and authority. His eyes, dark and piercing, settled on her as she stepped forward. "You have been seen," he said, his voice a low rumble that seemed to vibrate through the stone. "Moving in shadows, speaking to wolves, bending the forest itself. Who are you?" Lyra's heart pounded. Every instinct screamed to flee, to fight, to hide the truth of her power. Yet she stood tall, meeting his gaze. "I am no one," she said softly, "just a traveler who lost her way." The Alpha King's lips curved, almost imperceptibly, in a shadow of amusement. "No one does what you have done. No one bends the forest to their will and yet lives. There is something in you, something I have not seen in many years." Lyra swallowed hard. Every word carried a subtle threat, a recognition that her secret was no longer hers alone. "You are clever," he continued, "but cleverness can be a trap. One day your fire may burn you before it burns anyone else." Before she could respond, Cale appeared at the side of the hall, his expression unreadable. "The child has done nothing wrong," he said simply. "Yet she is strong, stronger than we expected." Lyra felt a flicker of hope. Cale had not betrayed her, yet the weight of the Alpha King's attention was a chain she could feel tightening around her chest. "You will remain here," the Alpha King said finally, his gaze lingering on her like a shadow. "We will see where your path leads, but remember this, no one in this castle is without eyes, and no one is without a price." That night, Lyra returned to her room, the door closing behind her with a soft echo. Her hands trembled as she rested against the wall. The castle was alive with eyes, whispers, and unseen dangers. Every lesson from the forest, every hour of training had prepared her for survival. But she had never faced something like this, the heart of the enemy, alive and breathing, and yet human, complicated, and dangerous. Her thoughts kept returning to Cale. His presence, his gaze, the faintest hint of curiosity in his expression. The magic in her blood pulsed as if responding to him, a rhythm she could not ignore. She had been trained to fight, to destroy, to survive. Yet a new feeling, one she could not name, stirred within her. The next day brought new challenges. Lyra moved among the pack, careful, observing, learning. She began to notice the cracks Cale had mentioned, rivalries, doubts, old wounds that had never healed. She could see how easily she could manipulate the threads, how quickly the pack's unity could fray. Yet every moment was a test of restraint. Her magic simmered just beneath the surface, powerful and unpredictable. One wrong move could reveal her entirely and bring the wrath of the Alpha King down upon her. That night, as she practiced in the shadows of the training yard, Cale approached silently. "You are learning quickly," he said. "Faster than I expected." Lyra stiffened. I must," she said, meeting his gaze. "If I am to survive, if I am to have any chance." Cale studied her, his expression unreadable. Then he smiled faintly. "The forest has chosen well." Before she could respond, a distant roar echoed through the castle. The walls trembled slightly. A warning, a challenge, or perhaps a test from the Alpha King himself. Lyra's magic surged instinctively, shadows bending around her, flames of energy rippling along her fingertips. Kale's eyes widened not in fear but in recognition. He knew, perhaps better than anyone, the power that had been awakened within her. And in that moment, Lyra understood the truth. Survival had brought her to the enemy's heart. But power, love, and vengeance were now threads tangled together, and one wrong move could unravel them all. Cliffhanger, the Alpha King appeared at the training yard, his eyes dark with suspicion and command. He stopped a few paces from Lyra, staring at her as if seeing a ghost from the past. "You have come farther than I expected, child," he said. But now the real test begins. Shadows shifted around her, magic thrumming like a storm waiting to break. The castle was silent as night fell again, but for Lyra there was no peace. Every corner, every shadow, seemed alive with watchful eyes. The Alpha King's presence was felt even when he was absent, like the pulse of a storm just beyond reach. Lyra's magic stirred constantly, attuned to the tension in the stone walls and the whispers in the corridors. Kale had become both a guide and a puzzle she could not solve. His presence was magnetic, pulling at her, yet she knew he was part of the very world she had sworn to destroy. Each conversation with him was a battle of subtle truths and hidden meanings. Every glance carried unspoken questions. And Lyra found herself caught in a storm she had not expected, the storm of feelings she was meant to resist. That evening, Kale approached her in the courtyard, where moonlight spilled over frost-covered cobblestones. The air was crisp, each breath forming a small cloud that vanished instantly into the darkness. "You move well," he said softly, watching her practice her shadow magic. "You are faster than I expected, stronger too." Lyra paused, her chest tightening. "I have to be," she replied, her voice steady but edged with the tension she felt inside. "If I am to survive here, if I am to finish what I began, I cannot falter." Kale studied her, the faint glow of moonlight revealing the sharp lines of his face, the strength in his stance. "And yet," he said quietly, "you are not hardened like the others. You carry something else, something human. It is dangerous but also rare." Lyra felt the words like a spark. Something inside her ached at his observation, an ache she did not want to admit. She could not afford to feel anything. Not for him, not for anyone in this place. And yet she did. Before she could answer, the distant sound of a horn echoed through the castle. The Alpha King's voice followed, sharp and commanding, carrying across the walls. "Lyra," it called, each syllable heavy with authority. "Come to the hall, now." Her stomach tightened. Every instinct screamed caution, yet she obeyed. The old woman's lessons echoed in her mind. Control the magic. Control yourself. Survival comes first. Kale fell into step beside her as she crossed the corridors. "Do not let fear control you," he whispered, almost as if speaking to her magic as much as to her. "They will try to unbalance you, to force a reaction. Stay calm." Lyra nodded. The Alpha King's hall was massive, its ceilings lost in shadow, the walls carved with the stories of conquest and dominance. At the far end, the Alpha King himself sat upon a throne of black stone. His eyes, dark as the void, fixed on her with unrelenting attention. "You have grown stronger," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "Stronger than I anticipated. Do you understand the meaning of power, child?" Lyra met his gaze. "I understand enough," she said firmly. "Power without control is nothing." The Alpha King leaned forward slightly. "Then you understand the danger you pose, and the danger you face. Tell me, why are you here?" Lyra swallowed. Every instinct told her to lie, to conceal the truth of her magic and her mission. Yet something in the Alpha King's gaze made her hesitate. Perhaps it was the recognition of her strength. Perhaps it was the unspoken acknowledgement that she had survived where others could not. "I seek understanding," she said finally, careful with her words. "And survival." Kale's presence beside her was steady, grounding, even as the Alpha King's scrutiny threatened to break her composure. The tension between them was like a taut wire, humming with energy she could feel in her very bones. The Alpha King's lips curved in a faint, dangerous smile. Understanding, survival, yes, these are traits of those who survive. But survival alone will not save you. You must master what burns within you or it will consume you. Lyra's magic pulsed in response, a subtle ripple of shadows and flame that she fought to contain. She felt it simmering beneath her skin, eager to leap forward. Kale's eyes flicked toward her, noting the reaction. "You have been training," he said softly. "Your control is impressive, but there is more. You must learn to bend not just the elements but your own fear. Your own doubt." The Alpha King's gaze narrowed. "Do you feel it, Kale? The presence in her blood, the storm waiting to break. Do you understand what it could do if left unchecked?" Kale's expression remained calm, but his golden eyes betrayed a flicker of recognition. "I do. But she is not reckless. Not yet, she has purpose." Lyra's heart tightened at the subtle conversation around her. Every word, every glance, every pause was a test. She realized with a mixture of fear and exhilaration that she had entered the heart of the beast. And yet she could not turn back. Days passed in a tense rhythm. Lyra observed the castle, noted the interactions of the pack, and practiced her magic in secret. Kale remained near, sometimes offering guidance, other times simply watching. Their moments together were filled with unspoken tension, a dance of proximity and distance. One night, Kale found her in the inner garden, where moonlight poured over frost-covered statues. "You move as though you belong here," he said quietly. "Yet you are not of this place." "How do you reconcile the two?" Lyra paused, watching the silvered frost. I do not belong," she said softly, "but I cannot leave, not yet. There is too much at stake." Kale nodded, his expression thoughtful. "And yet there is something in you that could change everything. Not just here, but beyond. You carry more than vengeance, you carry hope." The word struck her, sharp and impossible. Hope was dangerous. Hope could soften the heart that must remain hard. Yet, she felt it stir within her. Their conversation was interrupted by the distant roar of a wolf. The Alpha King's voice followed, low and commanding, carrying across the walls. "Prepare the chamber. She will be tested." Lyra's stomach twisted. Every instinct screamed caution. The test could be a trap, a challenge, or worse, a moment to expose her magic before she was ready. Kale's hand brushed hers as he stepped closer. "Do not falter," he whispered. "Whatever happens, control the fire within. Do not let it burn you." Lyra nodded, feeling the pulse of her magic surge stronger in response to his presence. It was not just the Alpha King she had to face now. It was the storm inside her, the storm of vengeance, of grief, of power waiting to be unleashed. The chamber was massive, illuminated by a single torch that cast long, twisting shadows across the floor. The Alpha King sat upon a raised dais, his gaze fixed on her as she entered. Around him, his most loyal lieutenants watched silently, the air thick with tension. "You have been observed," the Alpha King said, his voice echoing in the chamber. "Your abilities, your cunning, they have not gone unnoticed, but strength alone is not enough. You must prove your control, your loyalty if you wish to remain." Lyra's hands trembled slightly, but she forced herself to stand tall. I understand," she said, keeping her voice steady. The Alpha King's eyes seemed to pierce into her very soul. "Do you?" he asked. "Power without restraint leads only to ruin." "Tell me, child, what drives you?" Lyra's chest tightened. Her voice, when it came, was quiet but firm. "I seek justice for those who cannot fight for themselves. I seek to end the cruelty that destroyed my family." The Alpha King's expression darkened, a mixture of recognition and warning. "And yet you stand here in my halls under my protection. Do you understand the paradox, the risk?" Kale stepped forward, his golden eyes meeting hers briefly. "She is ready," he said quietly, though the Alpha King's gaze did not soften. "She knows the danger. She will not falter." Lyra felt the tension coil around her like a living thing. Every second was a test, every breath measured. Her magic simmered beneath the surface, eager to respond, eager to assert itself. Yet she held back, forcing control, forcing focus. Then the Alpha King's hand gestured toward the center of the chamber. "Demonstrate your mastery," he commanded. "Show me the power you claim to wield." Lyra stepped forward, feeling the familiar pull of her magic. Shadows shifted, bending to her will. Light flickered, reflecting off the cold stone. The room seemed to hold its breath. She raised her hands, focusing on the memories of her family, the pain of loss, the fire of vengeance tempered with purpose. A ripple of energy passed through the chamber, subtle but undeniable. Kale's eyes widened slightly, a glimmer of recognition passing over his features. The Alpha King's gaze sharpened. "Interesting," he murmured. "The storm is not yet fully formed, but it is coming and soon nothing will contain it." Lyra's chest tightened. She understood now that survival had brought her to the castle, but mastery would determine whether she remained free, whether she could protect those who could not protect themselves, and whether she could wield the storm within without being consumed. Cliffhanger. As the chamber trembled with her magic, a distant roar echoed through the castle walls, the Alpha King's call to his pack. Shadows twisted, torches flickered, and Lyra realized that the real test had only just begun. Outside, the pack gathered, their intentions unknown, while inside, Kale's eyes held both warning and something she could not name. The storm within her had awakened fully, and the battle for control, for vengeance, and for her heart was about to begin. The forest beyond the castle trembled under the weight of the full moon, its pale light spilling across the snow-dusted earth. Lyra stood at the edge of the inner courtyard, her cloak heavy with frost, her breath forming small clouds in the cold night air. Every step she had taken had led her here, to the heart of the enemy, to the Alpha King himself. Her magic simmered beneath her skin like a storm waiting to break. Kale stood beside her, silent, steady. His golden eyes reflected the moonlight, and for a brief moment, Lyra felt the fragile connection between them, trust, unspoken but strong. She had learned much from him, not only about the pack's inner workings but about herself. The storm of vengeance inside her no longer burned blindly. It was tempered with wisdom, with purpose, and with the awareness that destruction alone would not bring peace. "The time has come," Kale said quietly. "Are you ready?" Lyra nodded, drawing a deep breath. "I am ready, but I will not let rage rule me. This ends tonight one way or another." Inside the castle, the Alpha King waited, seated on his throne of black stone. His dark eyes gleamed like polished obsidian, filled with suspicion and the faintest trace of curiosity. The pack gathered around him, their forms tense, ears twitching, claws scraping against the cold stone floor. They had been restless for weeks, Lyra's subtle influence seeping into their ranks, stirring doubt and unease. "You have grown strong," the Alpha King said, his voice a low rumble that echoed through the hall. "Stronger than any I anticipated, but strength alone is not enough. Show me why you survive." Lyra stepped forward, shadows twisting around her, responding to her will. Her magic was alive, bending the elements to her intent. She did not need to attack to demonstrate power, only to show control, mastery, and purpose. "I do not seek to destroy blindly," she said, her voice steady. "I seek justice for those who cannot defend themselves. I seek to end cruelty, not to spread it." The Alpha King's expression darkened, but he made no move to stop her. Perhaps he recognized the truth in her words. Perhaps he merely waited to see the storm fully awaken. Suddenly, Kale moved. With swift precision, he positioned himself near Lyra, forming a silent shield between her and the Alpha King. The pack tensed. Even Lyra's magic rippled in response to Kale's presence, a steady, grounding energy that allowed her to focus. "You would stand against me?" the Alpha King asked, rising from his throne. His form seemed to grow larger in the flickering torchlight, shadows stretching like claws across the floor. "Do you know the cost of defiance?" Lyra's chest tightened, but her voice did not waver. "I know, and I am ready to pay it." The Alpha King's eyes narrowed. Then with a motion like a strike of lightning, He summoned the pack to attack. Shadows surged along the walls as the wolves leapt forward, teeth bared, eyes glowing with loyalty to their master. Lyra did not flinch. Her magic surged, bending the shadows to form barriers that slowed the wolves' advance. Flames of energy leapt along the stone floor, not to harm, but to create walls of light that channeled their movement. She moved like water and fire combined, graceful and precise, each step a measure of control over the storm within. Kale fought alongside her, not as a master of the pack, but as an equal, protecting her from harm while giving subtle guidance. Together they were more than strength, they were harmony. The Alpha King watched, eyes dark with fury and calculation. He unleashed a wave of raw power, a surge of shadows and force meant to crush them both. Lyra met it with her magic, drawing deeply from the lessons she had learned. Her power flared, bright and pure, yet controlled. The shadows clashed, twisting and writhing like living things, until finally the Alpha King's wave faltered, unable to overcome her focus. The hall shook, the torches flickered, silence followed, heavy and charged. The Alpha King's expression was unreadable, but in his eyes, Lyra saw the faintest trace of something she could not name: respect, acknowledgement, or perhaps fear. Kale's voice broke the silence. Now Lyra, finish this, but wisely. Lyra's chest heaved. She could unleash everything, destroy the Alpha King, the pack, everything he had built. But she did not. She remembered the old woman's words, Kale's guidance, the faces of her family. This was not about blind vengeance. This was about justice and transformation. She focused, drawing her magic inward, shaping it with purpose. A pulse of energy radiated outward, not to harm, but to bind. Shadows twisted around the Alpha King, not breaking him, but restraining him. His power, ancient and fearsome, was contained, locked within the magic she had mastered. "You will harm no one again," Lyra said firmly, her voice echoing through the hall. "Your cruelty ends tonight, but I will not kill you. I will make sure your power can never harm the innocent again." The Alpha King's lips pressed into a thin line. He struggled, tested the bonds of her magic, but found he could not break them. Lyra's storm had reached its full force, tempered with control, and it was enough. Kale stepped forward, placing a hand on her shoulder. "It is done," he said quietly. "You have tamed the storm, not just outside, but within yourself." Lyra's chest loosened as the tension ebbed away. The pack, sensing the shift, quieted. Some wolves knelt, others stepped back, their loyalty to cruelty broken by the presence of a new order, justice tempered with mercy. After the battle, Lyra walked through the castle halls, Kale beside her. The castle no longer felt oppressive. Shadows still lingered, but they were shadows of a past now constrained by her power and wisdom. The pack, once fractured and fearful, began to stir with tentative loyalty, guided not by fear, but by the balance she had restored. "You changed everything," Kale said softly, watching her, "not by destroying, but by controlling the fire." Lyra glanced at him, her chest tight with emotions she had tried to suppress. "I could not have done it alone," she admitted. You helped me find the strength to master it, to stay true to myself." Kale's eyes softened, a rare vulnerability breaking through his usual control. "I did not realize I needed saving too," he murmured. "From my own darkness." Lyra's heart fluttered. For months, she had trained to fight, to survive, to seek vengeance. But now she realized that the storm she had carried was not only about destroying enemies. It had been about transforming herself, and even Kale, into something stronger, something capable of hope and trust. They walked together into the inner courtyard, the moonlight casting silver across the snow. The air was quiet, the only sound the faint crackle of distant torches. Lyra paused, taking a deep breath. "This is not the end," she said softly. "There will always be challenges. But now I can face them, not as a victim, not as a child seeking revenge, but as someone who has survived, who has mastered herself." Kale stepped closer, his golden eyes meeting hers. "And I will be with you," he said. Not as master, not as soldier, but as someone who chooses to stand by your side. Lyra's chest tightened. The bond between them, once tentative and fraught with tension, had transformed. Trust and understanding had replaced suspicion. Respect and unspoken affection had replaced fear. And in that moment, she felt the weight of her past begin to lift, replaced by the possibility of something new, a future she could shape with her own hands. The Alpha King, bound by her magic, remained in the hall, a figure of dark power restrained but alive. Lyra did not feel triumph or hatred toward him, only the satisfaction that justice had been done. Cruelty would no longer spread unchecked. Power would no longer rule without wisdom, and the cycle of vengeance could finally give way to transformation. As dawn broke, Lyra and Cale stood together on the castle's highest tower. The first light of morning painted the sky in shades of pink and gold. The forest below was quiet, alive with the promise of new beginnings. "You have truly become the one the forest foretold," Cale said quietly, his hand brushing hers. "The storm that could not only destroy but also renew." Lyra smiled faintly, the first genuine smile in years. "And you were part of that," she said. "Not just the magic, but the choice to believe in something more than fear." Cale's eyes held hers, and in that gaze there was understanding, respect, and the spark of something neither had dared to name until now. The weight of the past lingered, but it no longer held them captive. And for the first time, Lyra felt the freedom that came not from surviving, but from transforming herself, the castle, the pack, and even Cale.